fun?
This is great. Am I doing this live?
You're pretty good at this, Caroline. You're not new to this rodeo. I feel like I need to headbang now.
All right.
Hey, live community. Hey, confidant community. I wish I could headbang.
I cannot.
Jackie Porter, the financial confidant. And it's Wednesday live at 5. How many of you remember this song? It's an oldie but a goodie. And how many of you remember the artist? I mean, who doesn't know this amazing woman? Who doesn't know this is Madonna? I'm telling you. This is like one of her signature songs. Of course, she's the diva of all divas. So this was a special request today from our live guest who I'm going to talk to today on the live. So she's here. She's been dancing away with us. And I love that I get a chance every single week to just be the pretend DJ and select a song. But as you all know, whenever I select a song, there's always a message behind it. So this amazing lady on the screen helped me to figure out the message as we discussed what we were going to talk about today on the live. And I just thought Ray of Light was such a great one. So Madonna, the diva of all divas, doing Ray of Light. And I thought, just speaking, here we are in January, and I don't know where any of you are who are catching this live today. How many of you are in Ontario catching this live? Because if you're in Toronto and Ontario, it's a snowy day here. We're snowed in pretty much. So that's what it looks like on the Ontario front. So just being able to talk about a ray of light in January, when this is pretty much what we've got to look forward to for the next, 3-4 months, if we're realistic. So talking about a ray of light on a day like today, I can't think of anything better. But I just thought, it's a challenging time. We've been talking about that for the whole month of January. We've been talking about how challenging January, this particular January 2023, has been with, we started off the pandemic where people were looking for work and had no trouble finding work. And in fact, I was reading so many articles just saying how prepared employees needed to be to attract the right workers and keep the right workers. And now here we are on the other end of the spectrum where we've seen many, many layoffs. And these things are not new. We definitely have cycles, right? Where things are good and sometimes things are not as good, and cycles in the employment and more unemployment. So we have these cycles, and it's just great to talk about, again, that ray of light. How can we as employees, owners, just figure out how to figure out our next career move? So I'm so excited to have our guest today, Dr. Caroline Cakebread. And incidentally, Dr. Caroline Cakebread is an awesome lady, and she has an awesome name. I'm telling you, I'm in love with your name, Caroline, because your name basically encompasses all of my favorite carbs, like cake and bread. I could just marry your name if I'm honest, right? Cake and bread all in one name. Come on.
It's
I'm sure you hear that a lot. So I know this. But she is also, not only does she have the best name with the best carbs in her name, she's also the co-founder of the Canadian Leadership Conference. So welcome to our live, Dr. Caroline Cakebread.
Hello, thanks for having me.
It's such a pleasure to have you here. You're the perfect guest to discuss this really important topic. So as I said, I just want to talk about your journey. We'd love for you to share. I know a little bit more about your journey, live community. FYI, we've had a conversation about this before, and I was just tickled pink. So tell us a little bit about your journey of disruption and reinvention, which, by the way, is our topic today, where we were talking about unemployment, cycles, and now we're going to talk to Caroline about what does that look like, disruption and reinventing your career later in your life, in your 40s.
Well, actually, and thank you. It's awesome to be talking to you, and I always enjoy talking to you. You have such a great energy, and you're so positive, and you're always really positive about my different reinventions that I've been telling you about, which is particularly good. And you know, disruption is probably a really big one in some of my reinventions, and then some of it is just more sort of driven by opportunities. And I think I've kind of had three big pivots in my life where I ended up on a different path than I thought I'd end up in. And
Yes,
I
haven't we all?
well, totally, right. And one of them was not in my 40s. And I'm going to start with that one, if
Yeah.
that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Seemed to set the tone. I was living in England, having my dream life, doing my PhD. My specialty was Shakespeare. I got to live and study there for 4 years. It was just
Sounds
awesome.
amazing.
It was amazing. I was at this beautiful research institute in Stratford upon Avon, and
My
you know, I
gosh.
go to the theater all the time, and the people were nice. It was just idyllic. I loved living there. And when I finished, I came back to Canada and promptly started looking for jobs, which I didn't get. So I was looking for all these academic jobs, but I was super picky because I kind of just really wanted to live in Toronto or in a major city. And so did every other academic applying for all those jobs, right? And it didn't happen for me. And it got to be around sort of fall, and I had no job, no academic job. And I was pretty down. To be really honest, I was really.
I could just imagine. I mean, we were talking about this. You get your feather, you get your cap on your head, and someone says, "You are now Dr. Caroline Cakebread." And now you're thinking, "All right, I'm kind of the shit." You know, I think that's fair to say. And then you come to Toronto, you're like, "Oh, I'm just gonna have, I'm expecting media." You know what I mean? Like people are gonna seek me out. But tell us the story.
It didn't happen. And in fact, I was living with my mom in my old home, and I was spending time publishing. I mean, a cool thing was that I published a good chunk of my thesis. So I was having all this success on email, but no success in jobs or anything that would pay me.
In real life is apparently what the millennials call it now. In real life, IRL.
I know.
On email, you were doing awesome.
Oh man, well, I didn't feel awesome at this particular time, and I was temping. I was doing a couple of things. I was catering, and then I was temping, and I was with a temp agency that had me go to the Toronto Stock Exchange, and I would go there, and like it was a real like temp job. I would go, and they wanted me to wrap these presents for listing ceremonies and things. And I didn't know how to use a glue gun. So I was in this like glass room, and I had all this wrapping paper that was beautiful. I mean, it was very nice. And I think it took me about 2 hours to get one wrapped and not well. And of course, I had all this reject paper in this glass thing. So I would be tucking it in. I was so embarrassed. I'd be tucking it in behind the only thing in the room, which was a picture. Just so they couldn't see.
I was going to say you didn't want anyone to see your handiwork, Dr. Caroline Cakebread. So you're telling me this woman with this huge name behind you. So you've got your PhD behind you, struggling with wrapping. They didn't give you basic training on wrapping, is what you're trying to tell me here.
Yeah,
like, I think I told you this. I did gift wrapping in the mall as one of my careers back in high school, university, and we got training. So I'm sorry to hear that they didn't give you any training.
I did not, and I wish we'd been friends then, because you probably could have helped me out. But I kind of thought, well, I don't have any job, and I was feeling kind of down, and I was sort of thinking, I don't know what to do now. And my friends kind of encouraged me to try getting a better job.
Yeah, maybe go out. Gift wrapping was doing anything for your ego.
Yeah, get a better temp situation. And I went back to my temp agency. And in fact, it turned out that at the Toronto Stock Exchange, there was actually an education assistant for their visitor center. They had a really cool visitor center called Stock Marketplace. And they needed someone to come in and help book the school groups in and different tours and stuff. And I thought, well, that'd be better. And it's full time. And it actually paid better than some of these entry-level academic jobs I was looking at. So that was a bonus. And I went in, and literally after 2 weeks, I loved it. I loved being at the Toronto Stock Exchange. I loved the people. It was young. It was diverse. It was exciting. You had the ticker tape going around. The floor had been closed at this time, but you had the ticker tape going around the whole place. And I thought I was at the center of the world. I loved it. And after 2 weeks, I was like, you know what? I'm going to take a break for a while from academia, and I'm going to do this and see where it goes. Yeah.
Amazing. I mean, I just love your journey of, I'm a caterer. I get my PhD. Yes, I'm like big time. Go from that to catering and wrapping gifts. And, you know, I think for a lot of people, that might have been a challenging thing to go through, because it doesn't feel like a come up, right? It feels like a come down from what your expectations might have been.
No, and the thing about it is, when you're in an academic environment, and particularly in humanities, where I was, everything you work for is focused, like you're in this sort of little world of academe, and you're in a bubble, and it can be great. My experience was terrific. But you're not everything outside of that world is kind of considered like kind of a bit of a failure. Like they don't prep you for anything. Like they don't really prep you to kind of come out and, you know, consider that, you know what, there's other jobs that actually are really fun and really good. And, you know, there are interesting things outside of, grad school and being in humanities. So that's what I learned. And it took me a while to really, after 4 years of seeing myself one way, to see myself a new way. And once I did, it was really exciting.
Well, tell me, like, how was the challenge that you had to like get over yourself and just open yourself up to other opportunities? Tell me about the challenge, because as I said, lots of people might have struggled with one of the challenges, which would be my ego, right? Like I'm, as you said, we were talking about going to parties and people saying, oh, and so Caroline, what do you do? And you're like, oh yeah, I have my PhD. Oh, and what are you doing with it now? Well, I'm catering and wrapping gifts, and quite horribly, in fact.
Well, actually, I would never tell people I have a PhD, because, well, first of all, like, I mean, so what? And also, some people kind of, you know, they don't really want to talk about that. Well, I would go to parties and people would ask me what I was doing, and I'd say, well, I'm actually catering. And then they'd be like, oh, and they'd look over my shoulder. Oh, I think I see, you know, Bob over there.
See ya.
Yes, yeah, and it was a really eye-opening, and I've really avoided asking people what they do when I meet them. In fact, I don't like it, and it never told anyone about me, right? Who really wanted to know about me, and I now take that into other people that I meet in social settings, or you know, at a business event or something like that. I don't ask it.
So if you're in a reinvention place and you go to a party, what should you ask? What should you ask if you're the person, you know, going through a reinvention, or the person who, you know, empathizes with that person kind of going through a reinvention? So they realize that's not the best question to ask, what you do, because as you said, it isn't always reflective of what your actual skill set is or your personality is.
Well, I think like what do you do for fun is a good one. You know, you might bring up, wow, I ate at this great restaurant, or I don't know. The reason we got talking about Ray of Light is my business partner, Joanne, got tickets to Madonna.
Yes, that's right.
What our favorite Madonna album was, and it's Ray of Light for me, which is about reinvention, like Madonna as a yoga mom.
I didn't know that. I didn't know that's
So,
how she reinvented herself, was when she started Ray of Light.
something like that. And yeah, so there's a million other things you can
Yeah,
ask
like
people.
even like, what are you excited about? Like, what
What
are
are
you
you
excited
excited
about?
about? Yeah,
Yeah.
what are you excited about today? But I think one of the best I've heard and that I use is so what do you do for fun? Because I mean, I don't know. I've been in situations where, sometimes I think, well, what do I do for fun? Especially if I've got kids and whatever, you don't have a lot of time. But it's a way to really tap into what's on someone's mind.
Absolutely. So that's a challenge you overcome. Are there other challenges along the way? Because you mentioned one career reinvention, which
Yeah.
was you left catering and you left gift
Yeah.
wrapping to do this other job, which was working at this Toronto Stock Exchange.
Yeah, so from there, I actually had an opportunity to build education programs there and to actually bring some of the best practices I learned working with teachers in England and Stratford upon Avon, professional teachers that came over to learn from both actors and academics. Kind of had a neat overlay to teachers coming to the Toronto Stock Exchange to learn from professionals, right, as well. So I launched a school program there. And then I went on to edit a publication for pension funds.
Wow.
Total, like 180. And because I thought it would be interesting to learn how to, edit and write, etc. And I really enjoyed it. But my next reinvention was really around opening up my own business and sort of moving out of sort of an organization setting, a corporate setting, which I found hard. I preferred going out and doing my own thing. One thing I loved about grad school in England is it's not course based. So you're there, you're very motivated. You have to be able to be driven
Right.
and push this project together on your own with your own energy. So what I did was I ended up going freelance,
Mm.
and the organization that I'd worked for and edited for, some of the editors hired me back to do some writing for them, which was just amazing and helped me get started. And then I got corporate clients, and 20 years later, I do a ton of consulting. I work directly with pension funds. I've worked with government. I've written financial literacy strategies. I've
Well,
just done all kinds of things.
and I think that speaks a lot to your personality. So I guess somebody from the outside looking in, and by the way, Donna, thank you for your comment. She says, I love meeting people with PhDs because I don't have one, and I know it takes dedication to get one. And 100% it does. We're talking about reinvention over in your 30s and your 40s and your 50s at any time, at point in time in your life. Because I think that's going to be a theme that we all have to deal with moving forward in just this economy that we're in. Like, I think reinvention could be an opportunity or it could be a challenge. So what were some of the key lessons that you learned along the way of going from, as I said, I just love the gift wrapping story in particular, after getting your PhD, going all the way to owning your own business? What are some things that people need to know?
Well, I think that the most important thing is being open. And it can be really hard because when you're good at one thing and you've been on one track, it can be hard to think, well, where could I go from here? There's a huge world of opportunity out there. And sort of narrowing it down is hard. But, my thesis supervisor had an amazing magnet on his fridge, and it said, everything is interesting. And in a way, if you are a curious person and you approach every day as interesting, full of interesting people with very, interesting pieces of your job or a potential job, I think that's really important, because if you're not open, then you're going to miss opportunities. Right.
Yeah, but I think even before you can be open, wouldn't you say? Because we were laughing about the whole, I like making light of it, that the whole gift wrapping thing. But isn't that a part of that checking your ego at the door, right? Because if you get caught up in what do I look like, how crazy does this look, You know, is that something that might block you from that opportunity? Because sometimes you have to be prepared to check your ego and be prepared to fail, aren't you?
Yeah, you have to be prepared to fail. And sometimes you just have to take opportunities that no one else really wants. Like when I was, and maybe my publisher who hired me might think differently, but I know the job of editing this publication had been open for a long time. And I think they were kind of trying to find the right fit. But at the same time, I don't think there were a lot of journalism grads running to edit a pension, like work with pension funds
Yay!
at that time. And so I took it. I thought, well, that's kind of a neat job. I can learn this, this, and this. Maybe it's an opportunity that could take me here, here, and here. I tried to think really more broadly about it, and I kind of got into it. Right, like I learned about pensions. I didn't find pensions particularly. Like I wasn't born to work with pensions, but I found that when I was open to it, I found the people really wonderful. The people that run these pension funds are just terrific, and they really care about the members, and they're really smart. So it was an opportunity to meet really smart people and hear about cool ideas and interesting things all the time. So it was more about that than I'm a pension person. Right? It was sort of open. So you have to be open. You have to be humble.
Yes.
Right?
And yes. And sometimes you get humbled when you're humble.
Yeah. There have been humbling experiences, that's for sure.
Well, it's a part of it, and I think it's just so important for people to know that doesn't mean you're failing, right? If you're, because you talked about, you know, taking the gift wrapping job, taking the assistant job, well beneath your pay grade, but it led to other opportunities. I have similar stories, Caroline, where, you know, you do sometimes things for free, and then people offer to pay you for it for the same reason, right? Like, oh, I'm not going to do this unless I get paid for it. But if this is something that you're passionate about, remember, if you're doing your second career, it's not about just the dough, because if you follow that passion, if you follow that curiosity, you'll end up, it often works out, doesn't it?
Yeah, it really does. And I think another piece is just, you know, getting out. I mean, if you are thinking of reinventing yourself, opening a business, I think we talked about this, Jackie, is finding your kind of mentors or your champions out there.
That's right.
And that can be hard to do. You kind of think it's going to be someone that you've done some great work for or whatever, but sometimes it can just be an opportunity you weren't expecting. And we were talking earlier, my business partner and I, in the sort of third pivot of my career, which is having the Canadian Leadership Congress, Joanne Boccia and I, my business partner, had worked together on events over a number of years. She's a phenomenal event planner. She's like one of the best in Canada. And she's just so good at having a vision and pulling all these events together. And I'm big on content. I love content and I love moderating. So we decided, well, why don't we get together and we'll see if we can do some custom events. And, you know, we met with a bunch of people, heard a lot of kind of no's, and then met with an individual who was great. We pitched them, this person, on our services, and he said, well, no, we have an in-house event team, so no, we don't need it. So we heard a no, but then he started talking about some of the events that his organization sponsored. And we started to talk about, you know, what a perfect event would look like, right? Like some of his frustrations as a sponsor and what some of the pension funds are really looking for. And we kind of mapped out this cool concept. And by the end of our meeting with this person, we mapped out a perfect event idea.
Wow.
Conference. And he said, well, if you can do that event, I'll be your first sponsor.
Wow.
Wow. So we had, it wasn't what we thought we were going to do.
No.
And by the end of that week, we had a proposal in front of him. We created the concept. And we had a sponsor, and then we had two more. And it was like, boom. And now we're doing it. And I just love it.
It's just so interesting when you listen, because what I get from that is, even though you were getting a whole bunch of no's, which,
A
by
lot
the
of
way, when you're reinventing yourself, live
yeah,
community, confidant community, expect
yeah.
that it's not always going to just be this easy road where you go to, it's like you make one call. And you and I were talking about how sales, I've been in sales my entire life. I used to do direct marketing, Caroline. Like
Oh, wow.
I'd be that person calling and getting the no on the other line. And, one of the things we learned is you just keep calling until you get a yes.
Yeah.
Luckily, things are a lot easier these days, but all of those skills are skills that are life skills, as far as I'm concerned, right? Is expect that you will need to do the work, and then you'll eventually get the results that you want. And you need to listen, and you need to like look for opportunity, and you need to be active, right? So you were making those phone calls or seeing people, talking to different, saying no. So you could have just said, no, that's it. And then you even still got a no from the person that you sat down with, but ask them,
Yeah.
what would a yes look like for you if you were going to do work with me? Okay, we're not going to do this. Are there other opportunities? And listen and deliver. So I just think there's so many seeds in that story of just resilience, as somebody said in the comments. Resilience is key. But yeah, sales are just such great skills. If you don't have sales skills, I would highly recommend taking some kind of sales course. It's a life course. Understanding how people think, what motivates them, are all things we all can benefit from. Even like if you have children, figuring out what motivates them. If you have a team, if you're a leader, so many things that sales helps you to do. Learning to be humble, because if you're the listener, you can't be the talker, right?
That's true. And that's part of it. Being a good listener, right? And I mean, you hit the nail on the head. Sales isn't about talking the whole time. A lot of times it's just about listening and then thinking about how you can help with what you have, right? And that's sale.
No, 100%. And we were talking, this is a great opportunity because the pandemic closed a lot of doors in terms of being able to be active. You could be active online, but now people are having events again. So if you're looking for champions and looking for mentors, how did you find your champions? How did you find your mentors?
Well, I just got out there, right? The person who ended up being our first sponsor would have never been someone that I thought, oh, well, there's a logical mentor or a champion for me. But he really turned into that. I think for champions and mentors, it's getting out and getting to know people. Picking up the phone, well, not the phone, I guess it's like Zoom and email now, but getting out and I've always found, and maybe this isn't for everyone, but I think people generally, if they can, like to help. I think people like to help, and that doesn't mean that you're going to ask someone to do all the lifting, etc. But maybe talking to someone about kind of what their challenges are, then talk about your challenges or what you're looking for, and get advice, right, on kind of where you're going, or find out how they approach their own life path, right? But just get out there, because you need people. You need people to be in your cheering section, as you go through this, especially with the big move. Boy, do you need it.
I agreed. As you're saying that, I was thinking about, now that I love the fact that we can network again and gather again. And I think people are hungry for it. So this is an opportunity I see out there right now. And I think about when I wrote my book with my mentor, Champion, is because we kept running into each other at networking events and finding out what we were both excited about. And I was telling her, that I love working with women, and I'm so excited to work with all these really brilliant women who are making amazing changes in the world, and they're on their own and they're empowered around their money. And then she's like, one time we saw each other, she's like, you and I need to write a book on single women. That's kind of how it happened. Is she came to me and she said, we need to do a book. I'm not single, but she had written many books before, so she's like, this is what we're doing. I'm like, oh, really? She doesn't, if you know her, she's not the kind of person who asks. She's just like, this is what we're doing. But what were you going to say?
Important, right? And that's also part of bringing your whole self into it, right? And allowing yourself to be vulnerable. That's part of asking for help, right? And people gravitate towards that. right? If you bring your authentic self into conversations and relationships, which can be really hard to do, especially for women in a work environment, to navigate that and feel comfortable being authentic at work. At least I always found it challenging. But if you can do it, that's the best way to find your champions and to really get out there and make changes, right?
Well, somebody on LinkedIn said, this is what we're talking about is almost a description of the benefits of a peer group. So I don't know who said that because it doesn't show up on our feed until after I go back into LinkedIn. But that's a fantastic, having a peer group, having people that you can be in a room with and be vulnerable. So that's definitely one of the avenues that people can explore. But it's as you said, it's just being open. What do I need right now? If I'm going through a reinvention, what do I need to support me? Now, do you have any other advice, Caroline, that you'd give people who are going through a transition that we haven't already touched on, that you think that people need to know?
Well, yeah, I think part of it is, you and I talked about jumping off points to start a business. I come from a line of entrepreneurs. Both my parents had their own businesses. My grandparents had their own businesses. So it was very second nature to me to be independent. Not great in a corporate environment, unless I'm a supplier. But I think the key is planning a bit. You don't want to be freaking out and not having enough money. When I made my first move, I kind of added up, what I needed just to get by, like my rent, food, all those kinds of things, and made sure that I had a little bit of money, your little fund off to the side to be able to make that kind of move. And then I did it. But you do need to plan a little bit if you can. But
Yeah.
mainly just be open. Everything is interesting.
I absolutely love that you mentioned money because, we see enough LinkedIn and social media posts about just do what you love and jump off the cliff. I mean, we're not saying that you shouldn't follow your passion, but this is a finance show. So of course, planning is a part of it. Planning just means that when you do follow your passion, you do reinvent yourself. You've got what we like to call on Team Jackie Porter, your financial fortress. You put a financial fortress together. That means that when you work the plan, you're able to sleep at night because you know how much money you have to work with and you know how long that money is going to last you and you know what you'll need to do next when it starts to run out. So having that plan is something that is essential when you're at career reinvention stage. And we have a number of our clients going into their second and third career who are reaching out to us to just see how their retirement's going to look if they make financial moves, specific financial moves. And those are the things that Live Community is available to you. Realize that you don't have to do any of these things alone. We've got on our live right now, Jody, who's our chief client experience person. So reach out to her, reach out to our team. Get support. We're offering all of our live community members a 30-minute financial strategy session where you can look at ways that you can build that fortress. Caroline, it was such a pleasure to have you. Honestly, I could talk to you all day long because I think we have so much in common. There's one thing I wanted to share with the live community that I didn't get a chance to this month is the month of January. And I thought this was such a great month to talk about reinvention because the month of January, did you know, live community, did you know, Caroline, Confidant community, that January is named after the Greek god Janus? And Janus is the god of beginnings and endings. Yep. So if you're, and you know what? Beginnings and endings are kind of like mindsets, right? So to me, that's really what reinvention is. Is it a beginning or an ending? Because it all depends on your mindset, how you want to frame that. And then it's really about reinventing yourself, being intentional about reinventing yourself so that, that you're ready for the next chapter of your life and you feel confident about the next chapter of your life. So live community, if you didn't get a chance to see the whole live, because Caroline and I talked about so much. And if you came in late, don't worry, we've got you. We're gonna have a summary of the live. We're gonna offer it to you as well, Caroline, a summary of the live that you can share. If you found this live useful to you, you can share with people, share with your friends, share with your family. And now we're approaching a whole new month. This was our last live of the month, so we're approaching a whole new month next month where we've got some exciting topics. It's February, so we're going to be talking about love and money, so you're going to have to stay tuned for that. So remember to follow us, live community. Like and share the information we have for you, and remember to follow us for all the latest updates. Thank you again, Caroline. Cake bread, the name I've fallen in love with. All of my favorite carbs.
Yay.
And I will see you, I'm sure, in another few weeks I think we're doing a conference together.
At the DC Plan Member Experience Forum. Yes.
I'm looking forward to speaking at that with you. So thank you again for being here. Awesome time with you. And see you guys all next month, if you can believe it. Take care, everyone. Be well. If you're in Ontario, stay warm.